Hello, it's Friday, June 16th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with ufo-headline news. So, what have we got to look at in the sky tonight? Well, actually, pretty much the same thing that was there last night. We can look for that ringed planet Saturn. It's going to be visible again from dusk till dawn. The Earth is flying between Saturn and the Sun, and that thing called Saturn's opposition is occurring. In other words, Saturn being opposite the Sun in Earth's sky right now. And it's a big milestone, so that milestone carries over into today. But for tomorrow night, if you're looking for the moon in the evening sky, you're not going to find it. Nothing mysterious here. The moon reached its last quarter early in the morning of May 29th. So the last quarter moon rises in the middle of the night and shines in the morning sky. The moon actually reaches its half-illuminated last quarter phase, June 17th, 11:33 UTC. Although the last quarter moon happens at the same instant worldwide, of course, it's going to occur at different times by the clock, depending on your time zone. From around the world, people will see the moon in the wee hours after midnight, June 17th. And no matter where you are on Earth, the moon will be highest up in your sky at roughly 6 a.m. your local time, 7 a.m. if you're in daylight saving time. It's going to look half illuminated. Although half-lit, it's called the last quarter or third quarter moon because the moon is 3/4 of the way in its journey from new moon to new moon. If you're looking from the north side of the moon's orbital plane, Earth rotates counterclockwise on its rotational axis, and the moon revolves counterclockwise around Earth. That's dizzying. There's a cool video that accompanies this article. It shows you the terminators, those lines between light and dark on the Earth and Moon. It shows that alignment at first quarter and last quarter moon. Half of that lunar disk is always illuminated by sunlight, while the nighttime half is submerged in the moon's own shadow. At last quarter moon, we see half the moon's day side and half its night side. That lunar terminator, it shows you where it's sunset on the last quarter moon as it wanes toward new moon. It's along that terminator line that you got your best three-dimensional views of the lunar terrain, even through binoculars or especially telescopes. Earth Sky recommends looking in the morning twilight when the sky isn't quite so dark to eliminate glare from the moon itself. Yes, there is a morning twilight, also known as dawn. Approximately 1 week after the June 17th, that's tomorrow, last quarter moon, it'll be a new moon in Earth's sky, but a full Earth in the moon sky. And you can see a graphic of that later at ufo-headline-news.com. All the charts and skies your heart could want. Here's the bottom line. Enjoy the June 17th, tomorrow, last quarter moon, and know that the Earth and Moon are like mirrors to each other in that when we see a last quarter moon in our sky, those on the moon would see a first quarter Earth. Cool thought. Here's a natural-born segue. Headline, Jupiter now has 69 moons. Our local gas giant has 2 more natural satellites added to its roster. Caleb A. Scharf has authored this for scientificamerican.com, a column called Life Unbounded. Indeed. And the article begins, the planet Jupiter is a beast, 317 times the mass of the Earth, mostly made of metallic hydrogen, and at the center of an astonishing collective of orbiting natural bodies. In fact, Jupiter's satellites form a shrunken version of a full planetary system. From the tightly bound larger Galilean moons, they're orbiting in something called the Laplacian mean motion resonances, and that's, for instance, akin to places like TRAPPIST-1, to that remarkable array of smaller moonlets that encircle this world out to more than 30 million kilometers. These bodies circle Jupiter in anywhere from about 7 hours to an astonishing 1,000 days. Later, gentle listeners, you can find some graphics, a fascinating set of time-lapse images of the large Galilean moons during Juno's approach in early 2016. Until recently, the catalogued satellites totaled 67 in number, but only the innermost 15 of these orbit Jupiter in a prograde sense. In other words, prograde, the direction of the planet's spin. The rest are retrograde and likely captured objects. In other words, other pieces of the solar system's solid inventory that strayed into Jupiter's gravitational grasp. That population of outer moons is mostly small stuff. Only a few are 20 to 60 kilometers in diameter. Most are barely 1 to 2 kilometers in size, and increasingly difficult to spot. And now, astronomers Scott Shepard, David Tolan, and Chadwick Trujillo have added 2 more. That brings Jupiter's moon count to 69. These additions are also about 1 to 2 kilometers in size. They were spotted in images as part of a survey for much more distant objects out in the Kuiper Belt. Jupiter just happened to be conveniently close in the sky at the time, so some serendipity there. These 2 new moons have names. They're S/2016J1 and S/2017J1. They're about 21 million kilometers and 24 million kilometers from Jupiter. By themselves, these small satellites don't amount to much, but they are a vivid reminder of the sheer abundance of material out there in our solar system and of Jupiter's royal gravitational status. Yep, King Jupiter. Here's an update on what seems to be a continuing saga, NASA trying to launch those colorful clouds over the East Coast. Well, they've been working on it. Again, weather hasn't cooperated. We found an update written by Mike Wall for Space.com. It's as of June 15th. NASA's next attempt to launch a small-sounding rocket to create glowing clouds in the night sky will occur no earlier than Saturday night. That's the 17th. Liftoff from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility from Wallops Island, Virginia, is now scheduled for sometime between 9:05 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Originally, if you recall, gentle listeners, there's a small NASA rocket. They're going to try to create those colorful artificial clouds. It looks as though the entire United States East Coast might get a treat, provided this works. The mission is designed to test a new multi-canister ejection system that should allow researchers to gather data over a wider area than has been possible. The rocket's total flight time will be about 8 minutes. The mission's main payload will hit the Atlantic Ocean about 90 miles, 145 kilometers, off the Virginia coast. They're not going to even try to recover it. The mission has been trying to get off the ground for some time now. We'll be following this and keep you posted at ufo-headline-news at Inception Radio Network. The esteemed journal Ars Technica carries this article with credit for Eric Berger. Headline: A spy satellite buzzed the space station this month, and no one knows why. About 6 weeks ago, SpaceX launched a spy satellite into low Earth orbit from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. As is normal for National Reconnaissance Office launches, not much information was divulged about the satellite's final orbit or its specific purpose in space. However, a dedicated group of ground-based observers continued to track the satellite after it reached outer space. And then something curious happened. In early June, the satellite made an extremely close pass to the International Space Station. One of the amateur satellite watchers, a fellow named Ted Malskin, estimated that this pass on June 3rd to be 4.4 kilometers above the station. Another, Marco Longbroke, pegged the distance at 6.4 kilometers. Moleskin later wrote, quote, "I'm inclined to believe that the close conjunctions between USA 276 and the International Space Station are intentional, but this remains unproven and far from certain," end quotes. In recent days, the journal Ars Technica has run these observations by several officials and informed sources. They're credible, these officials say, and they're very curious indeed. Said one astronaut who's commanded the International Space Station, quote, "This is strange. I don't really believe in coincidences, but I can't really think of anything that would be worth highlighting a close approach," end quotes. One expert in satellite launches and tracking, Jonathan McDowell, said of the satellite's close approach to the station, quote, "It is not normal," end quotes. While it remains possible that this near miss was a coincidence due to the satellite being launched into a similar orbit, That would represent, quote, gross incompetence, end quotes, on the part of the National Reconnaissance Office, he said. Like the astronaut, McDowell downplayed the likelihood of it being a coincidence. Eric Berger posits another possibility, a deliberate close flyby, perhaps to test or calibrate an onboard sensor to observe something or some kind of activity on the International Space Station. Quote, the deliberate explanation seems more likely, except that I would have expected the satellite to maneuver after the encounter, end quotes, McDowell said. Quote, but it seems to have stayed in the same orbit, end quotes. Another question, if the maneuver was deliberate, is whether the United States government informed Russia or other international partners on the space station. The Russian segment of the station controls thrusters. Those thrusters generally are used to maneuver the station away from orbital debris, so such coordination might seem prudent. In regard to these questions, so far, the United States government has declined to provide answers. A NASA spokesman offered to look into the matter back on Monday, but as of Wednesday of this week, there was nothing to say. A query sent to Public Affairs at the National Reconnaissance Office went unanswered. Eric Berger is going to update this story upon receiving official response, if any, and we'll keep you posted. Eric Berger is the senior space editor at Ars Technica. He covers everything from astronomy to private space to wonky NASA policy. His words. He's a certified meteorologist into the bargain, living in Houston, Texas. You can follow him on Twitter, and you'll find those links later at ufo-headline-news.com. How about we buckle into that shuttle now and take our ufostalker.com road trip for Friday? It's a UFO sighting in Blackpool, England. That's spelled Blackpoll. MUFON gave it a case number 84341. The date of this sighting is the 2nd of June, but it didn't get reported till June 12th. Here's what the witness says in summary. Very bright, round oval-shaped object, increased in brightness, never going dull, illuminating, and extra white light. Observed over the horizon, traveling inland, constant straight path. And that's just the summary. Under sighting specifics, the viewing distance was rather close, initially 501 feet, eventually 1 mile. The altitude of this object was over 500 feet, and there was no cloud cover. This sighting duration was 10 minutes and 4 seconds, but the object features are simply listed as none. The object flight path, straight line path. Its shape here is listed as sphere. Above in the summary we read round and oval, pretty close. And we must weather the weather whatever because there's none listed here. But here's the account. I had traveled to Blackpool with a friend on the Friday night of the 6th of June. After booking into the hotel, we went for a drink in the hotel bar. It was by then about 20 to 30 hours. Another guest was already in the bar. I required a cigarette, and so I went outside to the hotel front. It was facing the sea, facing the beach. I could see that the sky was clear. There was a full moon to my left, and I presume it was Venus, shining slightly lower to the left of the moon. The sky had the usual stars twinkling away, and I observed this odd high-altitude plane or planes moving comparatively slowly going through the sky. I was taken by the exceptionally bright object coming over the horizon. Then, from the sea, this object shone brilliantly. It moved at a faster pace than the planes I'd seen earlier. So I watched this for a minute or so. The other guest came out for a smoke as well at that point, and I showed this object to him, and we both stood watching this thing coming over our heads. It was round shape, and then it would appear to be oval, and it glowed with this intensity that outshone all the other stars above it. It was at least 3/4 times brighter than the moon. We could see planes flying high above this. They were going at a snail's pace compared to how fast this object moved. It maintained a constant pathway straight forwards. The other guests surmised that it could be the space station traveling through the nighttime sky, and although this is possible, I felt the altitude was far too low for such a flight path. We both continued to watch this object travel inwards until it was no longer visible. So at that point, we re-entered the hotel. Again, no punchline, but the confirmation of a mutual sighting, always good. Hang on, we're going to shift our trajectory across a lot of water and hover over Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's MUFON case number 84399 for those tracking and identification purposes. The date of this sighting was June 3rd, 2017. It was reported June 15th, 2017. In summary, witnessed a gray cylinder slowly rotate counterclockwise. I was lying in a park in downtown Ontario. Alerted two people I was with. Visually tracked object to northeast. Object reflected light as it spun. Sighting specifics offer a viewing distance unknown. The altitude over 500 feet. The sky was clear, no cloud cover. Sighting duration 2 minutes. Object features none. Object flight path, straight line path. And this object had a cylindrical shape. Again, no weather, but here's the sighting. The three of us were in a Toronto park that overlooks the downtown core. I was lying on my back, and directly above me spotted a gray cylinder in the sky. It was slowly revolving backwards. I pointed at the object with my arm and asked my friends, "What is that?" So my friends and I continued to visually track this object on its northward flight path. The object rotated about every 10 seconds, and we could clearly see the side reflecting light from the sun. I lost sight of the object over the horizon. When it passed, I asked what the time was. It was 7:45 p.m., June 3rd, 2017. And I then commented that we had just seen a UFO. It was upsetting. This thing defied all principles of flight. It had no wings, no sound, no engine. I could say this has been a life-changing event for me, and now when I see photos of UFOs, I have to believe these photos might be real. Oh, a life-changing incident, a different point of view, an unhinged paradigm, perhaps. Fascinating. From Canada, let's swing on down to the state of Pennsylvania, city of Yardley. That's the location for MUFON case number 84340. Date of the sighting, 6/11/2017. Date submitted, 6/12/2017. Summary: woke at 4 a.m., looked out window, bright light in sky, pulsing, array of different colored lights. Hovered, moved southwest. At 11 p.m. saw same light in sky again. And there is video, which you can find, gentle listeners, later at ufo-headline-news.com. Sighting specifics: viewing distance over 1 mile, altitude 500 feet or less, sighting duration 2 hours, but the object features are still listed as unknown. The flight path is described as having been hovering and then path, and this object was shaped like a disk. There's weather. The maximum temperature for Yardley, Pennsylvania, 92 degrees Fahrenheit, 33 degrees Celsius, dropping down to a minimum temperature of 66 degrees Fahrenheit, which translates to 19 degrees Celsius. Those visibility factors, they all stood the same, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. The conditions? No abnormal weather conditions. Here's the account. First person. On 6/11 at 4 a.m., I woke and looked out a second-story window to see a very bright light. I was thinking it was a planet. I continued to watch as this object hovered, slightly moving. It seemed to pulse, and at this point I knew it was too close to be a star or planet. The sighting was very bright. I believe I saw white, red, and blue-green light rotating on this thing, or pulsing. The object looked disc-like. It was a good distance above the tree lines. Planes passed within that area, and I could tell this wasn't a plane, and it certainly was not a helicopter. I could tell by the size and movement. I woke my husband about 4:45 a.m., and he also thought this was very strange. By this time the sun was coming up. The object was just as bright and visible. We went to bed at 5 a.m., and when I woke at 5:33 a.m., this object was further southwest. I tried taking photos and video with an iPhone. It didn't come out that well. That evening, my husband and I saw the same object in the same spot in the sky. We're thinking this must be something explainable or we're losing it. It was around 11 p.m. The object was there in the southeast sky again, in that same spot. It appeared very bright, and it hovered. I told my husband I couldn't take this, it's too weird, so I headed upstairs for bed. As I got into bed and looked at this object, it took off. It flew unlike anything I've ever seen, no plane, and it seemed to go on its side and then go horizontal. This thing moved very fast, up and over our home and to the northwest. My husband also saw this. We both ran outside. We could hear a faint humming, buzzing sound, and we are both in awe. We chatted about this for a minute and went back to bed. To my amazement, or I'm really crazy, I saw the strangest part. A very bright ball of whitish yellow light to the east of that original object in the sky. It was big. It was above the trees, 500 feet or so, hovering, moving irregularly up, and then in a blink, this disappeared. All we can offer at this point, gentle listeners, if this witness is losing it, well, the witness and her husband are in very good company. Lots and lots of folks are seeing things they just absolutely cannot explain. By reality as we know it. It's just a snap, just a blink from Pennsylvania to the state of Ohio, so let's do it. That's where MUFON case number 84308 happened. It happened on the 10th of June, 2017, and got a same-day report. Here's what our witness offers by way of summary. Worked on jets, seen them flying, training at night. This did not have proper wing lighting. More than one object, definitely not falling object, path too straight, no emissions. There are photos, and there's some video footage that will be available later connected with this sighting. You can find it at ufo-headline-news.com. The viewing distance listed here is unknown, as is the altitude. This sighting duration was only 20 seconds. The object features, understandably, get the report of unknown. The flight path was a straight-line path, and this object had a sphere shape. It's a short report, but here we go. Went out to grab the cell phone charger out of my scooter glove box and saw this object, or objects, hauling ass across the sky. I just had a little bit of time to snap the picture and just a bit of video, but it appeared to be more than one object before I lost the sightline. The trees got in the way, and the move was fast. I've worked on F-16s. I have enough knowledge of planes and helicopters to know this wasn't a plane, and it was not arcing like falling space objects. End of report. Once again, we have that intriguing aspect to this report. The witness has been around, worked on F-16s, etc., knows planes and helicopters enough to rule this out as being any of those. Let's go to the state of Indiana, city of Gosport, perhaps Gosport. They spell it Gosport. It's the location for MUFON case number 84339. This took place June 11th this year and was reported June 12th. Summary. Observed 4 or 5 star-like spheres, changing direction, then stopping. Starting, then changing direction at incredible speeds. Under the categories for sighting specifics, there's viewing distance. In this case, it was 501 feet to 1 mile. Altitude, over 500 feet. Nope, no cloud cover. Sighting duration, 10 seconds. Object features, none. Object flight path, path with directional change. And this object shape is reported to have been star-like. There was weather over Gosport, Indiana, and it was recorded. Maximum temperature 89 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature 63 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees Celsius. The maximum, mean, and minimum visibilities, all the same, 10 miles, 16 kilometers. And at the time of this event, there didn't seem to be anything abnormal about the weather conditions. It seemed to go something like this. I was in Gosport, Indiana. I was taking my dog out to do her business. I looked up toward the stars. Slightly east and almost straight above my head, I caught sight of what at first I thought was a satellite. Moments later, I observed 3 or 4 more orbs in that same area of sky. They seemed to have no certain path. They changed directions at will. These objects did this for a matter of about 5 minutes. And as I was watching them, they disappeared one by one until only one remained. Now this one was on a heading towards the south. It stopped, and then it dimmed, changed direction, and started heading north, as if toward Indianapolis. At this point, the thing looked as though it had landing lights as it proceeded north, and after about a minute it became extremely bright, brighter and bigger than any star in the night sky. It stopped, flickered a few times, and then this object totally disappeared. I have observed these same types of orbs at least 5 times in my life, dating back to New Mexico in 1975. This is my first encounter here in the state of Indiana. I wonder why this so frequently happens to me. It seems sometimes as though they're putting on a show for me. Perhaps it's because of my love for the beauty of a night sky, and I just look at the skies more often than most. Not sure. Oh, what a wonderful report. What an interesting set of experiences. Yep, we count in the company of our friends some people who have observed orbs. What we've observed is it's time to fly. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, Saturday, gentle listeners, as we go off the beaten path with the UFO Headline News here at Inception Radio Network. Till then, take care. Gotta zip, cuz that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to UFO Headline News at Inception Radio Network. You can follow today's broadcast at ufoheadlinenews.com. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.